YouTube, and a recording of the meeting will also be available afterwards. We're not expecting a fire drill today, but if it does sound, please follow the officers out of the building and gather in the cathedral grounds. Thank you. So moving to the agenda, item 1 is the membership apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest. We have received apologies from Councillor Lee Watson from Thurrock Council and Councillor Andy Baker from Tendring District Council. We also have a number of members joining us virtually. These are Councillor Joe McPherson from Rochford District Council, Councillor Jocelyn Law from Colchester City Council, and Councillor Chris Crisone from Uttlesford District Council. Are there any other apologies? Perfect. And are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you. I should probably declare that I'm a cabinet member at Essex County Council and Gypsy and Traveller Services is part of my portfolio, so I'm the budget holder for ECTU.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations? Thank you. Moving on to item 2 is the election of the chairman for this municipal year. Are there any nominations, please?
Right, Councillor Durham.
I'll second.
I'll third it then.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations, please? Councillor Durham, you are elected as the chairman for this year. Please take the chair, please.
Thank you very much, members. Back in the hot seat. The next item on the agenda is election of a vice chairman for this municipal year. Can I have nominations for the role of vice chair? We have is there a seconder for Councillor Bowes-Flint? Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Everybody, are there any other nominations? No. Councillor Bowes-Flint, you are duly elected as vice chairman. Thank you very much indeed. Item 4 on the agenda are the minutes, to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of November. Gosh, it seems such a long time ago. Well, it is. To discuss any matters arising from that meeting not covered on the agenda. Members, you will have been sent the minutes of the last meeting. Is everybody happy? They're a true record. Thank you. Seconded. Are there any matters arising? Excellent. Gosh, we're going whizzing through. So item 5, finance update, to receive an update from Karen Nason, management accountant. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to receive the 24-25 financial position, to receive the budget for 2025-26, and to note the draft budgets for 2026-27 and for 27-28, to note the 25-26 membership fees, and to note the balance sheet reserves. The Essex Countywide Traveller Unit 2024-25 outturn position was an underspend of £13,439. To note, Essex County Council's contribution to ECTU for 24-25 was £310,115 across internal partners, which equates to 75% of the total overall contribution received. The position confirms that legal fees and bailiff costs budgeted under supplies and services is broadly managed within the allocated budget, with a small immaterial overspend of £2,188. The position confirms an underspend of £79,400 against third-party payments relating to the 2-year contract with Phoenix Futures, budgeted at £463,400 per year, being fully funded by Public Health. However, the 24-25 actual cost was £384,000 and is £463,400 in 25-26. This contract is for outreach work for dedicated staff to provide enhanced support for individuals and their families within this community. The year-end position has increased the reserves from a surplus position at the close of 2023-24 accounts of £339,386 to a surplus of £352,825 at the close of 2024-25. Moving on to section 2, the 26-27 proposed draft budgets assumes that there are no increases to membership fees. Obviously, this will be subject to joint committee decision later this year. Employee budgets have increased by 2% for both years. All other budgets, excluding membership contributions, have been increased by 3% RPI as per the latest information available. The third-party payments budget and other contributions income budget, both for 463,400 in 25-26, relate to the two-year outreach contract, which finishes this year, hence the reduction from 26-27. A draw from reserves is required to balance the budget. However, this will depend on actual costs incurred in year. Section 3, that table details the 25-26 membership fees. As agreed, there was no uplift this year. It remains the same as it was for 24-25. And then section 4, that's the table of the reserves. You can see the closing balance at 24-25 of 352,825, which includes 13,439 surplus at the end of last year. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, any questions? Councillor Southern.
Just a point that may need to come up later, I'm not sure, but that contract ending, is there any possibility that that will go on? Or is this not the moment to ask about that?
Sorry, what contract are you talking about? Oh, the Phoenix Futures one. The Phoenix Futures contract. So that is at the moment, it's a 2-year grant agreement. So we've had year 1 and then we're going into year 2, and then there'll be an option to review it because it's more like a pilot to see how so we will review it during that period and then obviously see if we continue with that on that basis, really.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question to the finance officers is this. As we know, within the next 3 years, this place is going to be empty. BAS exit and other exits across the county are going to happen. So when you've got these huge reserves and surpluses, what's your plan? Are we going to still, as the last few financial years approach, still ask the other authorities to chip in or start to work down on those reserves? What's the plan?
So this reserve is specifically for this organisation.
Sorry,
That reserve is specific for this unit, so it would depend on what happens. I'm assuming this service will be ongoing. Obviously, that's not my decision to make. So it will depend on what the decision is for this service as a whole. But obviously, that money is for this. And if it was winding down, then obviously we would well, depending on timing, you'd look to reduce the contributions and use the reserves.
I think, Councillor Smith, I mean, we don't know yet, do we? That's the problem. We don't, I think when we come to look at the disaggregation in more detail, then clearly, you know, if it's going to depend whether there is a central Gypsy and Traveller unit under the mayoralty or whether it's all going to be devolved down to the unitaries, we just don't know. I mean, I would hazard a guess, although I'm stand to be corrected, that if it is devolved down to the unitaries, then there will be a redistribution of whatever is in the pot in according to the percentages of the contributions. So we know the districts contribute 2% of the income. I mean, but it's too early. But at the moment, it's business as usual. And I think it's, you know, we've had another good year. I know we're going to come to that later with the illegal encampments, but I think, and you'll particularly know in Basildon, there are, you know, potential issues on the horizon. So I think it's important that we maintain those reserves as long as we possibly can, and then worry about how we disaggregate it later in the process. Thank you. Any other questions on the finances? Thank you very much indeed. I think, are we going to be asked to agree? No, I think it's just for noting. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda, the Rural Engagement Team update. Sergeant Brady, hello again.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to give you a very quick summary, so not to throw too many numbers at you, and a brief summary of our findings for the last 12 months. In short, the 12 months from 23 to 24, we saw 71 encampments, of which 8 were subject to Section 61 and 6 were subject to Section 60C, the new power, or relatively new powers now, to manage unauthorised encampments. And again, 71 total encampments. 12 months from 24 to 25, and it goes up to April, we saw 64 encampments, so a marginal decrease again, which is surprising. Was expecting a bit more of a plateau, but the numbers have continued to decrease, and the use of police powers on both of those legal bases are broadly the same. The behaviour of individuals on unauthorised encampments has shown continued improvement. The team continue to work with travelling families, and have developed reasonably positive relationships with several of them. I think this comes down to the consistency that we apply the law and the legislation. We are led by the powers in law and the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, and as soon as a family breach or an encampment breaches that legislation, we'll consult with the National Police Chief Council's guidance, which ensures proportionality and justification, and then we will move each and every time. This has developed into an understanding that Essex is a no-go for people that come here to commit crime at ASB. And I think that fact is probably well demonstrated with a recent encampment that we had in Margaretting. They're new to the county. They don't know how Essex works. For them, they were slightly prickly. In one encampment up in Clacton, where we kept a close eye on them, and they, you know, worked with them, kept explaining our code of conduct and acceptable behaviours. They've then moved overnight and gone onto a cricket ground in Margaretting. They broke onto the ground whilst the cricket game was actually in progress. There was a minor disturbance, human waste left within a very, very short time. And within a number of hours, they were followed by the team going over the Dartford Bridge into Kent, where we followed the protocol to make Kent aware that they've got a travelling family that have caused us problems on their way to them. That's an exception to the rule, and the reason I brought that up is to highlight the positive working that we do with the families that regularly travel the county. They'll work with us, they understand the code of conduct. If there are minor issues, we can resolve that through conversation because of the relationships that we've built up. And moving forward, I'm hoping that will continue, where those relationships get stronger and we can have polite words to curtail behaviour. And what this has enabled the team to do now we're at a lower level of encampment is manage more effectively. We can make sure that fires aren't getting set on the ground regularly. We can more regularly patrol encampments where we're expecting or anticipating problems, and really keep on the front foot with these things. So really pleased with this year. It's a good progress with the relationships, as already said, and hoping that continues into the next season. Thank you, Chair.
Again, thank you. I know we congratulate you every meeting, but I think it's well deserved. We are really, really lucky that, you know, we do have this increased team which is brilliant. And as Sergeant Brady said, you know, the traveller families know that they can't come to Essex and cause a problem. So, you know, that helps everybody. I don't know if anybody saw the photographs of the field following Appleby Horse Fair. Thank goodness we don't have things like that, which was a pretty interesting thing. Sergeant Brady, yeah.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Appleby, and I think this demonstrates the strength of the team and the way that the encampments are dealt with in Essex. I had the sergeant from the traveller team, effectively, that covers Appleby Fair, visit us last year with a request of how do you do it? Why are you doing so well in Essex? So we are respected among our peers in other forces where they have frequent problems to share what we do.
Thank you. Essex leading the way again. Councillor Bowes-Flint first.
Thank you, Chairman. I just really, on what the sergeant said, how good this is now working with the teamwork is because the example he gave used to be the norm. Now it's like a rarity that we do get the bad behaviour. Normally now they're well behaved. They know the rules and they do what they have to do and then they move on. And we've had quite a few, as you may well be aware, in our district just recently. But it's all worked like clockwork. It really has. And working with ECTU has been absolutely brilliant. For £8,000 a year that we contribute, I honestly think that it's a wonderful service that we receive. But if we get the word over to the travellers of how we treat them with respect and everything else like that, they actually respect back and they behave better. And unfortunately, now and again we get that, but it's good to hear that it's now not the norm, it's a rarity. And the other travellers won't help that. They will look at it as bad behaviour because it's situations like that give them all a bad name, unfortunately. And that's what the public zone into, bad behaviour like that. And they think they're all the same. They're not at all.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. One conversation that resonates what you were saying with one of the families that we have a good relationship with is that it's actually made Essex a safer place for decent traveller folk because they know that they're not going to be followed or have other people joining their group that are very undesirable. So it actually makes their life a lot safer as well.
I've got Councillor Sossin first, then Councillor Savage, then Councillor Morgan.
Mine's more of an observation and to ask if I can speak to you afterwards, because I have a local community policeman I've been explaining all this to, and he's very interested, and it might be nice if he could communicate with you at some point and maybe come along to this meeting. But I assume he would need to be properly invited. And so, yeah, if I can have a word afterwards, it'd be great.
Yeah. Councillor Savage.
I'd like to echo some of the comments already made about the excellent work that the Traveller Unit, the police team, actually undertake. I think, however, that the dynamic has slightly changed for the residents of Castle Point in that when we've had issues with travelling communities, certainly the guys who used to rock up at Waterside Farm and the Point on Canvey, they were always dealt with excellently. What we're seeing now is the static sites, so the one that's on the edge of Basildon and Castle Point at Sadler's Farm, and the new one at Watlingham Road, where occupants who are not travellers, and we know they're not travellers, are committing crimes in the Castle Point and Basildon areas, and I don't know how we manage that. I suppose my question to you, Sergeant, is are you aware of the local community teams of the criminality in the rural engagement team? Because I think there's something missing there. There's a disconnect between the travelling. I think the travellers get a bad press actually from some of the residents of those sites, and I don't think that's fair.
The static sites, as you refer to them, are managed by the neighbourhood policing teams, NPTs. My team's remit around the traveller world is is those unauthorised encampments. Whilst we are often called to be involved with any enforcement around any traveller sites, although not expert, our regular dealing with traveller communities has given us a bit of experience in communicating at the right level and making sure the messages that we give are understood. But we don't deal directly with static sites. I'm more than happy to speak to you afterwards, though, and we can maybe sort out something between myself, you, and the neighbourhood policing team to at least grease that communication channel and make sure that concerns are being raised to the appropriate area.
I think that would be really useful because, we know there are an increasing number of privately owned sites, and, they're not always trouble free. And I think it's really important that the neighbourhood policing team understand and use your experience of dealing with the traveller community so successfully. Perhaps then they don't have the same insight. So I think it's quite important that you work with them. But Councillor Morgan next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just really picking up on that point. In Malden District, there's been an increasing situation where travellers are buying their own land and setting up their own sites. I was just wondering if anecdotally that's something you're seeing more of, and that can obviously cause issues locally as well. I'm just wondering, do you see that this is more of a sort of the operating method that travellers are approaching situations?
Certainly the travelling families that I speak to, life is hard for those that live a nomadic lifestyle. I understand that. I think the older generations now are looking to settle down, so to speak. They want to purchase land. They want some land so they can grow roots, they can get their kids into education, and contact with health services, all those sorts of things is what they're after. I don't have any specific numbers on the unauthorised developments because that's more of a concern for the council. But yes, I am aware of several sites where land has been purchased and then developed over a bank holiday weekend usually. And by then you're in the realms of something I know very little about, which is the retrospective planning permissions, which
Chair, sorry, can I just, on a point of information, can I just confirm that in those circumstances where you've got a site that's effectively privately owned, that is actually not something for the rural engagement team to get involved in, it's for the local...
You're...
Yeah.
There's no breach of law. It is a development issue, something that we have almost no powers over.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start by going through the chair to Councillor Morgan. I agree with his concerns about pieces of land coming up for sale and travellers buying them and then waiting for a bank holiday Monday, do what they've got to do. And when the council comes down and issue a stop notice, the horse is pretty much bolted. But with these changes in grey belt, where people can put them forward to development, there was a piece of land in my ward which was just glowing for a traveller site. But the planning committee went against the planning officer's recommendation because the small developer wanted to put 2 bungalows there. And because of the problem with travellers, the planning committee was like, well, it's now grey belt, passed. So that's something you might want to look into, because the grey belt situation puts now that piece of land potentially up in value. And if it can have a house, then it might not be sold to travellers, unless a traveller wants to build a house and live like other people. But my question is on, following on from Councillor Morgan's point, there's a site, a small parcel of it has always been traveller owned, not a problem. But the rest of it is Homes England's land, very small parcel, it's got no value, right next to Basildon Hospital. They've trespassed onto their land, they cut down all the trees to expand, set light, with all the fumes going into the local nursery school and Basildon Hospital's land. That included some tyres, and the site never had tyres. So where those tyres come from, it must have been a magical fairy that put it on the fire, but they always seem to find tyres. And now the weather's improved, there's a triple SI field the other side of the site abutting it, and weekends they're out there on quad bikes just using it as their own personal sporting thing. I have complained, the local residents have complained, but unfortunately, no one seems to want to come down there and say, look, it's a triple SI field. It's not your land. It's not. You shouldn't be tearing around on quad bikes, upsetting the local residents with the noise and destroying triple SI land.
Yeah, I completely agree. No one should be destroying triple SI land or illegally riding off-road vehicles from whichever ethnicity or background they're from. I'll just advise you and your residents to continue to report that. Obviously, we have to assess every call made to us on threat, harm, and risk, and I appreciate this is a real and genuine concern for your constituents, but we'll do what we can. And the reason I'm urging you to report each and every incident is the more incidents that come in, the more it's highlighted as an issue, the more intelligence we get, the more rapport we can build with communities, and then the more we can effectively target those that are committing those crimes.
Councillor Smith, yeah, this is absolutely mirrors the situation we've had in the Malden district. And unfortunately, it's coming down to development control. So where there are breaches of planning, and then we get into the vagaries of enforcement, etc., etc. And we all know that the planning, the LPAs are stretched as well, and the local policing teams. It is a problem, and this use, the purchasing of land, there's nothing we can do to stop the travelling community buying pieces of land. And as you well know, and now with our local plans and the new allocations that districts are being required to increase to, it's going to be very difficult to turn down planning applications that come for bits of privately owned land by travellers. Again, this particular case Councillor Morgan referred to, the piece of land was purchased, the local Malden refused it at committee, and it was overturned at appeal. So we are now, stuck with it. But Councillor Bowes-Flint, you're next.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to say exactly the same, although it's not for this committee. Just be warned, because we've had exactly the same in Braintree District. We've refused on planning 3 different plots, and one of them is absolutely outrageous where it is. All got through on appeal. So the planning inspectors are obviously feeling more sympathetic towards that kind of development now than what they may have done 10 years ago. And a word of warning, when districts are doing their local plans now, when they used to get a big site, the developers used to give the district council money rather than have an allocated site for travellers on that actual site, so they could sell their houses much easier and for more money. They're not going to be able to do that in the future, so they are going to have to provide the sites. We haven't got all of our numbers in Braintree, but we do a damn good job of trying to get them, to be fair. So, yeah, it's coming, everybody. Thank you.
Councillor Suzzing, yeah.
I don't think I've got anything to add to that.
Yes, we got somebody raising their hand. Yeah, okay. I can't see, sorry.
Yeah, Chairman.
You're behind me. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Hoping you can hear me. Morning, and sorry to be bellowing down on you from on screen and not there in the room. My apologies for that. To return ever so slightly back to unauthorised encampments, I'm just wondering, perhaps the Sergeant can advise us, or whether it's something that we can do through ECTU as a wider piece. But we have parish councils here that struggle with understanding how to prevent unauthorised encampments. So what methods they can pursue to protect, for instance, green spaces. Do they use bollards? Do they use gates? It's these questions about what's the most effective tool to prevent unauthorised encampments and the use of green spaces against really their original purpose. Where can parish councils go? Where can landowners go for that support and guidance? Is that something that we can offer as a committee, or as ECTU, or perhaps it's our rural engagement team?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Sergeant Brady.
Thank you, Chair. So last year, I commissioned a piece of work where we looked at the areas that were frequently subject to unauthorised encampments, and we deployed officers to each of those locations to speak with the landowner or parish council or whoever it may be, to give them bespoke advice, because obviously every bit of land is different. That being said, the incident I mentioned in Margaretting, it was a very substantial metal gate that was removed by what I can assume was be a really high-powered grinder. So we can do things, we can recommend things at least to keep you to target hardness best you can. However, you know, like any security, nothing is foolproof. But if you contact me, you can take my email from the minutes. I'm quite happy to receive emails from anyone, and then we can come out to whichever parts of land is in question and offer some bespoke advice from our experience of dealing with encampments over the years.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I think quite a lot of it's probably a bit of a fire door strategy. If it can hold them up for a sufficient amount of time, someone can be on the phone making the police aware that they're trying to gain entry. And I think that's part of the kind of process that parish councils recognise and understand. You know, can they catch these guys before it's too late, before they're already pitching up? So yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's good to know that if the parishes need you, they can get in touch on that particular front.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's fair to say, if they want to get in, they're going to get. If they want to get in, they're going to get in. But there's a limit, I think, between getting access relatively easy and then committing criminal damage. That's another thing altogether. But yeah, the team are excellent, and you know, as you've heard, they're happy to come out to the parish councils and look at the pieces of land and recommend whatever they can that's best for that particular site. But it's almost, as we found out on some of the county council owned land, it's almost impossible to stop every potential entry into land. But it was very difficult anyway. But yeah, that offer is there. So thank you very much indeed. Councillor Smith.
Just a fault, not all, but you do get the occasional traveller incursion on private land where they use that land as their own little tip, pick up people's people pick up people's rubbish and other junk, dump it on a corner of the land where they're trespassed. They're eventually moved on, but the fly tipping's there and the district or borough council gets the bill to clear it. Now CCTV has become so much cheaper. Could we work on a policy so when there is a traveller incursion, the ECTU, in partnership with the district and boroughs, say, right, we're going to put up some mobile CCTV high up on lampposts to record any vehicle going on and off the site. Now, if a vehicle's going on a site with an open bed truck full of rubbish, number one, we've got the evidence. Number two, they should have a waste transfer licence for that vehicle. What is the Environment Agency doing about it? And if they're doing nothing and that vehicle hasn't got a waste transfer licence, we should be seizing it and crushing it. And the third thing is prosecute anyone dumping that rubbish there, but having that CCTV evidence near the entrance point to where they've illegally gained access onto a piece of private land through trespass, that will also send out the message. So if travellers are just going to a site where they shouldn't be, just to work, that's one thing. But if they go into a site to stay and make a bit of crafty money dumping rubbish on the site, we should be going after them. Because commonly it's open land, and if there's a bit of asbestos dumped in, that's not good. So I think we should seize the vehicles where the opportunity arises in those situations and crush them and prosecute them for dumping rubbish, because it's our taxpayers paying for it.
I think that's, you know, the police are, I mean, where it's on private land, I'm guessing it's the landowner's responsibility if he wants to put up any CCTV. I stand to be corrected. But I know we've done it at fly tipping hotspots, and that's probably part of the rural engagement team's responsibility, not necessarily travellers that are fly tipping, without a doubt. But and in what we do with the prosecutions, that's not even in the hands of the police. I guess that's the CPS. But Sergeant Brady.
There we are. So I'm not aware of any tips on sites over quite a number of years. Small amounts of domestic waste are often left. Large fly tips, not something I'm aware of. It's something we keep an eye on, and part of that code of conduct that I've mentioned is about waste, and that will range from domestic waste to commercial waste. I think you may have to be very careful about targeting people with CCTV as a public body. There's laws and legislation around that, such as RIPA. And then just because someone set up a traveller site or an unauthorised encampment, putting CCTV on them because you suspect they may commit crime, I think it's probably a stretch of that legislation. And you're almost talking about targeting CCTV on people because of ethnicity, and I think that's something that we all need to be very cautious of, to make sure that, you know, don't get me wrong, if in the right circumstances we can apply for RIPA and we can get surveillance on people and we can do all these sorts of things, but I think making the risk assessment on that just on someone's ethnicity alone is something that's probably quite dangerous.
Thank you. I appreciate what the officers are saying, Mr. Chairman, but local authorities can put up temporary or fixed cameras to deal with fly tipping. So if a traveller's turn up on a site and it's on public land, say a lamppost, you fix a temporary camera too. If there's no fly tipping, there's no problem. But if they're turning up with trucks to a site, we've had this in Basildon, car park 14. They was there for 2 weeks. It was Homes England land, and it was piled absolutely high. I think they cleared about 32 skip loads of rubbish from the illegal incursion. So if we can put up cameras to catch fly tippers, catch people dropping cigarette ends and the like, if people are turning up in open bed trucks full of junk to dump on a corner of a site where they've committed a legal incursion, we're just enforcing the law, surely. It's not picking out anyone. If they're not fly tipping, not a problem. But if they are fly tipping, there is a problem. And the poor taxpayer shouldn't be on the hook to pay for someone's crafty, tax-free little scam.
I think, in fairness, Councillor Smith, the Sergeant has made it clear that you're on very thin ice if you're targeting travellers because they're travellers, even if they're peaceful. I think that's going to open particular issues, but I'll let Sergeant Brady confirm that.
Yeah, if there's intelligence linking a certain people on a certain encampment to crime, then I think we're a lot safer to do that. But what you're talking about is targeting someone on their ethnicity because they're travellers and they'll cause rubbish without any intelligence to back up they are, without any knowledge of the family to suggest that they're involved in crime. Now, that would be akin to putting up CCTV outside, an Asian family's house or something like that, because, stereotypes of what Asian families might do. We've got to be very careful, and the law is there, and I'll quite happily speak offline so we don't take up too much time about RIPA and the authorities that needed to directly put people under surveillance.
Okay, we're going to move on from this, but we've got Councillor Morgan.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just obviously, I'm sort of new to this, very new to this committee. I was just wondering, in view of the discussions going on, is we've got representatives here from other councils as to their experience as to how swift and efficient their enforcement teams are in terms of taking action in any authorised development. Obviously, that's not something we necessarily do there, but I would be interested to hear anecdotally of the evidence because, frankly, my experience isn't that great. Thanks.
I think it depends whether you're referring to unauthorised encampments on public or private land, because this committee only deals with, or ECTU only deals with unauthorised encampments on public land. So, but I'm sure we can find those statistics for you. I'm going to go to Councillor Suzin first.
Well, first of all, our parish council, Great Meadow, is now getting ready to set up some mobile cameras, as you were suggesting, but that is not for the type of things you're suggesting. But in order to get them, you've got protocols, you've got permissions, you may not look into someone's window even. So there are a lot of strict rules around even having a mobile one, and the costs are increasing. We're going to find it difficult. but we just need to deal with some speeding areas in our patch. So I wouldn't dream of doing something like that. We have a lot of protocols as we work here, and that works fine. I know it's not going to be perfect, but there is one thing I wondered. In previous times, parish councils have been invited to a police talk. Maybe EALC would do one, and you come along and tell them exactly how you work and how they should work and how they can keep the level of worries of local people down, and how local people have to deal with it as well as the police. So I'm suggesting another meeting through ALC. I'm sure they'd be happy to do that.
I think that's an excellent idea. I mean, we can speak to the EALC, and I'm sure you'd be very happy to address the EALC, because it gets all the parish clerks together, and I'm sure if they promoted it, they would get an extremely large turnout. So, I mean, Sergeant Brady, if you're happy with that, we can set the wheels in motion.
Yeah, very happy to. It's something I've actually approached the EALC to try and arrange. Unfortunately, it didn't come to be. For whatever reason on their side, they couldn't commit to it. But perhaps with this committee's support, it will put a bit more energy into that, and more than happy to do that. Because I think if I can explain just a little bit about how the team works and where we are with the current state of affairs, that would offer a lot of reassurance to residents as well, I'm sure.
I will write to the chairman of EALC and suggest that this would be a very good opportunity for them to get everybody together. Councillor Savage.
I was just following on from Councillor Morgan's comment about how well boroughs engage, or how well informed we are when travelling communities are moving through our areas. I was interested to hear the chap on the screen's comments about the parish councils not hearing, because we've only got one parish council in Castle Point, that's Canvey, and they're well informed when we get travellers coming into our area. We border Rochford, we share a CSP, a community safety partnership, and certainly if we've got travelling communities coming into Castle Point, Rochford are informed straight away as well. And I was interested to hear the sergeant's comments about when they move out of Essex into Kent, because we've also had information from our community policing team in Castle Point when people have been coming the other way across the bridge towards Essex. So I would suggest that we're very well informed by the police and our local communities.
We've got Councillor Law and Councillor Chris Christoni on the have raised their hands. Councillor Law first. Come in, Councillor Law. No? Okay. Well, we'll go. Oh, there we are. Okay. Councillor Law, yeah, pose your question. We can't see you or hear you at the moment. No. Okay. We'll go to Councillor Chrisoni.
There is a slight nuance in coming to consider the use of CCTV. I'm sorry to jump back to it, but I absolutely agree with Sergeant Brady. How awful it would be to target in the way that's being described. But actually, on many occasions, it sounds like Councillor Smith's sort of anecdotal point about this Homes England land is very similar to a bit in my patch, whereby we know that there's a consistent pattern of fly tipping adjacent to an established traveller site. And so if you take a place-based approach to this, you can recognise the fact that actually it's nothing to do with the people. It's to do with the fact that the location suggests that there will continue to be fly tipping over a consistent period. And therefore, it would be necessary, sensible to monitor that by CCTV. I think it's a more pragmatic approach. What's really interesting is that I've reported and seen people that don't live on the traveller site, that live in the village next door, fly tipping on that site. And they're the first ones to complain that it's the travellers at it, which is awful, really. It really is. But yeah, maybe a place-based approach where we recognise that there's consistent fly tipping in a particular location, therefore we should deploy some form of surveillance, keeps you away from those pretty sensitive arguments around monitoring based on ethnicity.
I think yes, that's a point well taken. I think, you know, we have had instances where the general public fly tip, and they deliberately fly tip near gypsy encampments, be them official or unofficial, so that the travellers get the blame for it, and that's really, you know, totally unacceptable. And I think where the police are able within the law to conduct surveillance then they will. But as you've heard, you know, there are restrictions, and you can't target because of ethnicity, but we can target in hotspots and hopefully catch people whether they're travellers or not. So yeah, Councillor Law, are you there?
Yes,
There
can you
Hello.
hear me? Sorry, yeah.
We can and see you. Good
Okay,
morning.
so sorry about that. Apologies. So I just wanted to sort of come back in and sort of agree about sort of issues around sort of the fly tipping and take that as a separate issue. Going back, sorry, prior to discussion, I think in Colchester, I'm quite new. I've just taken on a portfolio under which this comes, and we have been quite lucky in the way in which matters have been dealt with. Sort of unauthorised encampments have been dealt with quite promptly. I think we have a bit of an issue where we've got certain parcels of council land that are very difficult to manage, and we have repeat incidents. So I think I would like to take up Sergeant Brady's offer, if he hasn't done this previously, and I'm not aware of perhaps advising us of anything we can do, because it can be quite frustrating when you have repeat incidents happening. Residents can feel a bit frustrated that you're not addressing issues, but obviously, as we know, some areas of public land are very hard to, you know, sort of like cordon off sufficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure Councillor Brady's taken that up, and I'm sure he'll make
Thanks.
contact. Is that all right,
Thank
Sergeant
you.
Brady?
That would be great. Thank you.
Yep, throw me an email. I'm quite happy to receive emails from
That's great.
anyone, even if we've been in the past. There'll be no harm again in visiting again.
Thanks.
Things may have changed, and we'll quite happily provide that advice to you.
Right. Thank you.
Did I have Councillor Savage on? No, Councillor Suzzing then.
Only a quick plea to can the county and other authorities have another look at their information they have on their website about who to contact and what to do in such an unauthorised camp when one turns up. The more information that's on there people can look at quickly, it's very useful, and some authorities are better than putting that information up than others. That's all.
Somebody's popped. Is that another hand? I'm sorry, your name's not on the screen, so I don't. But is that the blonde lady with glasses? I'm sorry, your name's not up.
Thank you, Chairman. It's Councillor McPherson from Rochester District Council. I'd just like to echo Councillor Savage's comments that we are very well informed where we border Rochford with Castle Point. I just wanted to touch on the fly tipping issue and CCTV. Of course, local authorities can target any hotspot area where there's fly tipping. They can put up their own cameras, which they can monitor, as long as it's obviously with the correct signage, etc. So it isn't targeting any demographic. It will target that area where you usually have fly tips. And as the other councillor mentioned, it is not always the travellers. It is often somebody quite local. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll knock the fly tipping on the head. We're straying away from. Its points are well taken and well made, but we're straying out of the remit of ECTU. So I think we'll call it a day on that. So if there are no further comments, thank you very much, Sergeant Brady, and your colleague who's not not who is identified on the. Excellent work. Thank you very much indeed. We will contact the EALC, and I think it's good to know that you're happy to take direct inquiries on the issues that are really important to local people, particularly to parish and town council. So thank you very much indeed. Next, operations performance update with the ECTU Countrywide Traveller Unit outreach report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Here with me is my colleague, Charlie. Tracy's not here today with us due to an emergency. So I'm going to be presenting the report. Okay. Our team continues to work on a three-stream approach: direct one-to-one work with supporting families in their homes and on site, multi-agency working whilst advocating for the GRT community, set up and deliver training package to other services across Essex. Collaborative working. By working closely with other agencies,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, all right. So collaborative working. Our team has closely worked with other agencies to get families' needs met efficiently, and with our services continuing to face daily discriminations daily. And because the GRT community are illiterate, so navigating their way through modern technology can be quite challenging. We're still working closely with Universal Credit and other benefit services to empower them and also to support and how best to support the community. Our team continue to work with Provide, NHS Service, and the Child and Family Wellbeing Hub bus to facilitate on site enable the GRT community to have basic access to health services, leading to the community accessing wider service within the NHS. The library bus also attends the site as well across Essex, giving the community the opportunity to learn how to read and write. We also continue to support the community with education, admissions, transport, and breakdown barriers. We support with domestic abuse victims, working in collaboration with other services that specialize in that area. We work closely with housing to prioritize safeguard as well. Okay, case study 1. I don't know why it's not coming up on my. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. We've had the case studies. I think, yeah, I don't think unless members really want them to go through one at a time. I think, they're excellent. It's an excellent example. So if you want to skip ahead, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. We're just going to go on to education then. So we support with admission forms, primary school, secondary school, colleges, and also what we haven't included is apprenticeships for those between the ages of 15 to 20 years old, starting with level 1, level 2. Applications for home to school transports were eligible closest school that can offer a place, supporting schools to engage better with parents. Most times parents find it challenging communicating with the school, so we come, to support them with that. Supporting partners such as Children Missing Education Team, Children's Social Care. We also promote alternative provisions, the needs group. The cultural norm is to leave school before secondary school age, which is year 6. We offer emotional supports in areas that the community feel they face discrimination, bully, prejudice, lack of understanding, etc. So go on to the case studies, okay. Our continuous professional development, our team would continue to take part in various training courses, widening around knowledge of what our services are within Essex. So our skill sets, we have skills in, myself and my colleagues, are the whole benefit system, which is universal credit, PEEP, DLA, that's disability learning allowance. We do the form complete forms for the GRT community. Because they're literally can't read and write, so we help them with the forms. We support with mental health and well-being support, like suicide prevention, domestic abuse counseling, family therapy, advice and guidance, safeguarding lead, drug and alcohol support, mental health first aiders. My colleague Tracy she's a first aider. Neurodiversity, like autism, dyslexia, ADHD, etc. What we've got in the pipeline is we're hoping to provide basic knowledge on oral health, because most of them are not registered with a dentist. So we get them we sort of like making arrangements to have dentists go on site to give them a basic knowledge about the oral health, and also diabetics awareness for those who are suffering from diabetes. Next slide, please. So at the moment, we're working with Phoenix Futures to provide, to reach out to more of the GRT community. So just to provide an enhanced support within the travelers community. And it's been great so far. Thank you very much for listening. Any questions, Jim?
Oh, thank you very much indeed. I think it's important to stress the outreach work is so important with a community that's very hard to reach, and there are real problems. We know about the education problems. We know that the culture means that the vast majority, certainly of girls, don't go into secondary education. So that is obviously an ongoing issue. Health is a massive issue with that community as well. And I think I'm correct in saying that there's a higher degree of domestic abuse in the Gypsy and Traveller community. I've got everybody nodding except Sergeant Brady, but
we don't know is the truth. Underreporting is expected to be way beyond any other community. So to actually get a figure, I think would be impossible. But the underreporting is certainly a big problem area.
Thank you, Chair. It's almost forbidden to talk about it in the community.
So we know it happens, but they will not report it. And
they won't. Yeah. And if you can't just do it on their behalf because it's not consent, you have to.
I've been in post. Hi, I'm Charlie. I've been in post for 6 months, and I would say that what I've noticed the most from this community is the lack of trust in professionals. So I think a huge part of our work is building them relationships to, once we've stepped in, I mean, I've worked with families where they're reluctant to trust me, but as soon as that trust is there, they look, you bring in whoever needs to come in. So yeah, I'd say a big part of our work is building them relationships.
And I think that's already been demonstrated by building the trust with the police, who are, for obvious reasons, mistrusted by the Gypsy and Traveller community. But once you have that trust, they respect it. And the same with our outreach workers. But it's making that initial contact and building those relationships that's so important. I've got Councillor Bowshlin.
Thank you, Chairman. Not as a rep from Braintree District Council, but as you are aware, but other members won't be aware, I'm Deputy Cabinet Member for Children's Services here at County. And I also sit on the Domestic Abuse Board of Southend, Thurrock and Essex. So this is music to my ears, what you're saying, because I appreciate that because of behaviours before, not a lot of domestic abuse is reported, but we are doing our damnedest in the county now to make it easier for anybody to report. And because police figures show, because we have an assistant chief constable sit on that board as well, and there is that much in the county that they're having to move officers over to that unit because of what they're having to deal with. So it's music to my ear to hear that you guys, because it does not happen overnight and it doesn't happen over weeks, it happens over months and years, the trust of you going into them and then you being able to help them in every aspect. And obviously I've got a vested interest in the children getting out of this and getting on the right side and being helped and being able to, the parents being able to report to you and ask you for help, because that is the biggest problem, is the trust, and it is the trust with the police as well. And having spent 20 years in Essex Police, I find that difficult, that people don't trust the police. Of course I do. But I do try and understand, and we get that with young people in children's services as well, where they tell us, because we say to them, you should report that. They won't report it because they don't trust the police. Why don't you trust the police? So I'm like an interrogation then, because I want to know and understand from them why they don't trust. So, you know, hats off to you guys for all the great work that you're doing and what you're getting out of that work. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. It's more of a general question, really. Do you tend to find that most of your outreach work is with what I call true travelling communities, the guys who are coming in and out of county, or is it more at the static sites where you do most of your work?
Well, we go for, there are travelers who actually live in Mortar Bricks house, like the actual houses. We do that. We go to them as well. And the ones that live on site. So we support all travelers, all of them, no exception.
Yeah, thank you. Just following on from that, I was interested in Sergeant Brady's comment that he thought that some of the older generation of travellers are probably not looking to travel anymore. And I'm just wondering, in general, is this a community that's increasing, or is it one that's sort of finding it more and more difficult to maintain its traditions in the modern world? I'd be interested to know what your thoughts on that are.
I would say most of the travellers we've been working with they're starting to settle.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, that not a lot of them do actually travel anymore. That is more their ethnicity rather than.
Yeah. This is possibly a sort of facility that may not necessarily be as needed in the future as it might be. I don't know. I just thought.
And I would say it would still be needed. It's there. So you get two groups of travellers. Some of it's their ethnicity, and others it's a life choice. So there's the boat dwellers, the showmen. They'll always be travelling. So yeah.
Thank you very much for the great work. Yeah, do you want to come back again?
I just wanted to come back to when you said about why they don't trust the professionals. So I've lost my train of thought. Sorry, can I come back to that? Sorry.
And Councillor Sossin, did you want to? Over the years, new age travellers, we've had all sorts of people that have taken up a nomadic lifestyle. Doesn't necessarily mean they are gypsy and traveller communities, and there are different communities in that. There's the Eastern European, there's the Irish, and you know, it's a very mixed group. I'll let Paul come in.
No, sorry, what I was going to say, and I don't know it verbatim, but if you look at the new planning definition for travellers, it actually talks about persons of a nomadic lifestyle, which is down to their cultural or their roots as well, doesn't necessarily mean that they'd still travel. So that's what you find. I mean, I think what you have to look at as well, and other evidence, and probably for the local authorities here with your local area plans, and you're looking now at pitch provision and the amount of new settled pitch provision that is in those required in such areas, then that is just showing, I think, what you said earlier, the extent of the growing traveller community, I think. And again, it is more about settling, whether that be on a permanent site, bricks and mortar accommodation, and where actually travelling, as Charlie pointed, it's more of a cultural lifestyle choice where you may be going to Appleby Fair, going to religious gatherings, whether or not you're just doing it because that's been your tradition and history for work purposes. And I know even some of the families that come into Essex, and we've had this before, I know particular travelling families who are coming because their grandparents did it and they're kind of following that family tradition, and they come for work, but they will go back to settled sites, whether that be in Ireland, whether that be in England, or bricks and mortar accommodation.
I think, yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, historically, that community used to move around working in agriculture at harvest time, etc. And they're doing it out of, for old time's sake, even though there's not the hop picking or apple picking or whatever these days. Councillor Savage.
I think you make a very valid point. And I think this is what we need to do as councillors, is educate our residents as well, because when I was a child, they were either gypsies or Romanis. I'd never even heard the term traveller, and I think that community, the dynamic has changed slightly in their behaviours as well. So I think we do really need to understand. You mentioned boat people. I think, we've got a community that live on the creek at Canvey, so people don't understand that is all sort of encompassed together. And I think that's important that we do get that information and share that with our wider community.
Okay, excellent. Oh, yeah, Charlie's remembered.
That's what I was, that's just brought it back to me. So when you say about the trust in the professionals, it is down to that. It's cultural awareness. And that's another thing we've started to do, is put together that training package to empower the other services to be aware, because they don't feel understood. So I think when they feel understood, which is what we're trying to reach out to other services to do, is cultural competency. So it took me back thinking.
I think it's something, and it's something that I've learned is the true gypsy traveller lifestyle. They have cultures. They have very set cultures. We know that these manifest itself in the fact that with education, they don't like the children, or particularly the girls, to be going to secondary school, and they have the way they live, the way they actually live on a daily basis. And these are cultural things that people sometimes struggle to understand the way that they work. Councillor Savage,
you just sort of sparked a thought that I think one of the elements that I see from residents with a lack of trust towards the traveller community is the fact that some of the sites that are being developed at the moment are being bought by traveller families, but being rented out as private accommodation to just about anybody. So they're not a traveller community. And there's a dynamic there that's happening. They're running businesses now, and of course the residents see that as well. They're not paying council tax. They're tipping, blah, blah, blah. And that might be not politically correct, but I think that works both ways. That's all I'm trying to say. Do you know what I mean?
Right, thank you. I'm going to move it on now. Thank you very much for that. Unauthorised encampment report, and that's Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everybody. So I'll just wait for the slides to come on the screen. That's all right. Lovely. So this is the ECTU unauthorised encampment, and this is covering the period from November to May end this year. So just a brief note, obviously, our data is not a comprehensive list of all encampments in Essex, as we may not be advised on encampments on non-partner or partner or private land. So there may also be occasions where we made an initial visit to establish a position or location but not pursued if found, as said, on partner or non-partner or private land. So the first figure, this is the comparison from the period just mentioned to previous years of that comparative. So as you can see from this winter, we've virtually had the actual autumn and winter part of it, had no encampments apart from those 2 in December. And so we had 25 encampments for that period. We did pick up in April, just before around Easter, we had 13 encampments, which is very much in line with the previous years. However, May was slightly a decrease in the number against previous years. However, that might be due to some of our encampments staying longer than normally usual on private land. So normally maybe 3 or 4 encampments might be added to that number. As you can see, definitely significantly reduced in recent years, 44% reduction on last year's figures. Sorry, I'm just. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just the figure 2, which is the breakdown of the unauthorised encampments, which does include the reported non-partner areas of the district and boroughs. And as you can see, like the previous years, Colchester and Braintree are the most popular destinations for the encampments at the moment. Again, this is the same 2 groups of families that we've had for 2 or 3 years now. So they're very much the same, the creature of a habit and the destinations where they can know they can get on. So very much Usford, obviously in second place. They had 5 encampments. Again, part of the family was moving up. So those 3 sort of district areas where they migrated to. So figure 3, that just breaks down the previous figure into the unauthorised landowner. So obviously of those encampments previously, obviously private land was also quite the biggest hit this year, for this period, sorry. ECC land and actually were also ones of the Colchester and the Braintree ones. They were actually ECC land as well. So, but Utterswood actually had all their own ones, their own land targeted. So figure 4, that just breaks down the other previous slides into more detail about the type of targeted areas. And as you can guess, when the weather is settled around the Easter onwards, the green spaces become their first port of call. And then obviously car parks, always targeted again for the high standing. Apologies, thank you for that. Sorry, I'll repeat that. So yeah, so green spaces were the first hit, and then obviously car parks owing to the hard standing and security and local access. The figure on the right just shows you the number of caravans at these encampments, and as you can sort of pinpoint the actual same sort of families within the number of caravans at those encampments, as they got a mixture of large and smaller ones. So it just gives you a flavour of where the amount of caravans there. So the next slide is just the other points of reference. So overnight stays, 1 day less. We counted 5 for this period. Previous years we had 12 and 28 for those periods. So our weekend landing days, we registered 7 weekend reports, contrary to the previous years, which was 12 landing days. And also ECTU, we did have 11 reports of further encampments, but on verification were not traveller related encampments. So they were in Basildon, Braintree, Chelmsford and Harlow, Tendring and Usford for those 11 caravans. The reason why they was either a resident related caravan or a homeless stopping tents, or they had vacated on sites. And so the final figure is figure 8. So this is just the KPIs for this period and the breakdown on the left-hand side. So of the encampments that we were involved with, 20% were triggered and police action, which was their cause of removal. We went to court on 30% of that figure, and 50% were also negotiated. On the right-hand side, that just tells you the landowner, which was 64% on partner area 20 on private land, and the remaining 16% was on ECC highway or property. And just little stats at the bottom. So of the encampments the ECTU visited were 100% on one working day. So that's when our officers would go out and start the proceedings. So section 77, 78, or 80% of those 25 encampments when we started the process. And the encampment completion timelines, we completed 100% within the 10 days, but it's 95 within the 7 days. Short presentation, that concludes. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Nice to see we're on a continuing downward trajectory, particularly when you compare it to pre-COVID. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you. The private or unoccupied private land is obviously more than most. I would have been interested if that could be broken down into private land into which particular district, or does it follow the same sort of breakdown as the other ones you're showing?
Yep, I can go back to refer to our data collection, and we can break that down further. Yep, no problem. If we can put that on the notes, if that's all right.
Thanks, Chairman. Just to go on from what you were saying, obviously the Braintree district have one of the highest figures, but there is a pattern that they always go, as you well know, they go to the same sites. But the one they're on at the moment actually does upset a lot of residents because it's by the cemetery, and a lot of people then feel that they can't go into the cemetery. So thinking of what you're saying and thinking about the history of the site, I think I will just speak to officers and perhaps the police as well to see if there is anything that we can. It's a difficult site, as you know, to do anything with, just to try and deter them. But it is just this presence that there is a cemetery there, and people do feel scared to go in. That they're fine as far as I'm concerned. They are fine to go into the cemetery. Nobody would take any notice of it, but it's this fear of the unknown and attitudes basically. But yeah, that's just the dodgy one that we have, but all the others, well, one of them's a country park that they like going into as well. So yeah, there is a pattern, you're right, and that's all we get now. We don't get the ones on the side of the road and car parks, Freeport car park and everything like that. That's all stopped, but it's just the regular ones now, and that still makes us top of the list. Thanks.
Member, any other comments on illegal encampments? Thank you very much indeed. And that brings us to the end of the agenda. Unless anybody online, any questions? I'm not shakings of heads. Thank you very much indeed. Brings us to item 8, the date of next meeting. The next meeting, 14th of November this year. Same place, same time. Everybody, thank you very much. Let's all keep our fingers crossed for a nice, peaceful, legal encampment-free time over the summer. But we can but hope.